Hello, welcome to the Whiskey LodgeCast. Today is Thursday, June 15th, 2023, and we are doing the Virginia Whiskey Tournament special for round one, batches C and D. And I'm just going to let Phil get right on into it.
Well, last last week was a lot of fun. The all all of the batches were really tight. And this week it's already kind of a higher vote total and much bigger difference in who's ahead in all of the polls. And by all the polls, I mean both. Um, and we've got some really great heavy hitting distilleries in both of these batches. In batch C, we've got the Davis Valley Distillery, which is also a winery, and perhaps better known for their wine. The Virginia Distillery Company, which is one of the big names in American single malt whiskey. Blue Sky Distillery, which is sort of a more varied distillery, and Silverback Distillery, which operates both in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I'll just go through some quick facts about each of those in turn, once I figure out where I put my cursor. Starting with the Davis Valley Winery and Distillery. So, these guys make Samuel Franken Solera whiskey, Owen Cox bourbon, Virginia Frost vodka, and Appalachian moonshine. So the Samuel Franklin is interesting because they've got a cool like tiered rack Solera system where they move portions of the spirit down a level every time they do a bottling. So theoretically speaking, they're basically getting a blend in the bottom barrel when it comes time to pull and bottle from those. Um, they, like a lot of Virginia distilleries, source grain from the area around where they are in Southern Virginia, and they they do a lot of like interesting like computer tracking for what they do to like put as much technology as they can into the traditional approach to distilling that they've taken. And they do a lot of contract distilling, or a lot of what they distill ends up being contract distilled for other people, basically NDPs or non-distiller producers. And I don't believe that currently any of their products are available for sale through via ABC.
Interesting. All right. There's
Very
some stuff to
interesting.
unpack here. If I could just call out a couple of things
Oh
that
yeah,
stand out to me.
yeah.
Please.
And I'm officially watching the clock because I don't want this to turn into a tangent show like last week. Um, for my own benefit, because boy, editing that stuff was hard. Anyway,
Yes.
um, so they've got a pretty I wouldn't say narrow portfolio. Is this was that an exhaustive list there?
A fairly exhaustive list, yes.
Okay, so I would say it sounds like they're fairly new, but by contrast, this distillery is contract distilling for NDPs, which
Yes.
is unusual in a new or small craft distillery.
That
I
also
think
really caught my attention. That's fascinating.
they've been around for, I want to say, 5 or 6 years. I'm not 100% sure. Um, like a lot of places, you've got to sort of scour their website to find that specific information. And the winery has been there for a lot longer than the distillery. So that's where it gets to be kind of a difficult area in terms of figuring out um, when they actually started distilling. But they've got
Hmm.
a pretty well developed core lineup that does have some variation. Like in their Owen Cox bourbon line, they've got a couple different Owen Cox bourbons. The Samuel Franklin is just their Solera aged whiskey, which is a really interesting thing that I'd like to try at some point. I've just got to figure out where I can get it.
Nice. So the obvious question, whenever I see winery and distillery, I expect to see some kind of brandy.
They do not have any brandy listed on their website, interestingly.
That is very interesting.
Fascinating.
Well, all right. Once again, we have that they source grains from local farms, which is great. If they were to make brandy, I assume they would be sourcing grapes from their very own vineyard.
I would think so, yes.
One other thing that stood out to me about this description is that this distillery is blending modern technology with the tradition of craft. I think, this is my personal take, I think craft spirits are elevated by their embracing of technology. Because there's so many variables that you might want to control. And the more automation and modern technology data collection you do, really the more consistent, if not better, your results can be. And I think there's still so much unknown about the creation of spirits and the flavor production that doesn't take the art out of the
No.
production.
And it's really important to have really good data tracking, to have really good consistency between batches, which is important when you are a small producer.
Absolutely. People want to count on the product that they're buying. And the fact that they're not available in the Virginia ABC yet is interesting. Do they only sell out of their own tasting room?
They might. I am not sure. There are a handful of distilleries on today's list that are not available through via ABC stores, and all of them I think are ashamed that they aren't.
Interesting. Well, very good. We're 5 minutes in, so I think now's a great time to move on to the next
Yep.
distillery.
All right, Virginia Distillery Company, one of the biggest names in craft distilling in the United States, let alone the Commonwealth of Virginia. Founded by George Moore in 2011, and now it's run by his wife Angela, his son Gareth, and his daughter-in-law Maggie. And they're sort of an interesting. Uh, it's a family-owned and operated company, which makes it, not unique in craft distilling, but sort of an interesting, as big as they are for craft, and still being family owned is really impressive. Um, they not import. They bring in malted barley from the Midwest, and they put it through a BOBY. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I want to say Bobby malt mill, but it's probably Bobby, and I have no idea which it is. That was built in the 1920s, which is kind of cool. And then they ferment it on site and put it through a pair of pot stills that were built in Scotland, which is cool.
Were they using any particular Scotch distilleries before now, or?
No, they were custom built for the Virginia Distillery Company by a still builder in Scotland. They don't say which still builder, and I don't know how many of them there are in Scotland currently. And they've got this really great picture of their still room on the website, which I have stolen for the slideshow. That is gorgeous. Honestly, I think that they've got some of the most beautiful stills being used in Virginia right now.
Yeah, I don't know what to say other than that it is beautiful. I love all of that. Uh, that's very cool. Yeah, and I would say at the moment, I have heard of Virginia Distillery Company before. I don't think I have had any of their products.
They don't have a very broad distribution, unfortunately. They are, of course, available through via ABC, a couple of online places, and they have distribution to a couple other states. But like a lot of craft producers, their distribution is limited.
I was trying to figure out this sample I have over here says VA Distillery CO, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Virginia Distillery Company. But what is CO?
Yep.
Colorado? So
Company.
yeah, company. But what I was confused about, this is a handwritten label. What I was confused about is that VA is written V.A. And I was like, that something's wrong here. But anyway, I do actually have a sample. This is the only one that I've tried. This is the VA Distillery cider cask.
Oh, my favorite one of what they've released.
This is a real good whiskey. So
I
yeah,
need to try some of that.
I've heard of this company before, but I knew nothing about their production setup. So I want to say I feel I don't have a personal bias here, saying that I didn't even realize as we were reading this slide that it was Virginia Distillery Company. It's easy to gloss over these things, especially when you're juggling, producing, and hosting at the same time. So correct me if I'm wrong. There are actually other producers of American single malt in Virginia. Is that not correct?
Yes, there
Okay.
are a handful.
Okay, so when you say the Virginia single malt producer, what do you mean by that?
It's sort of when you say single malt whiskey in Virginia, people immediately think of them because they were sort of the pioneer in making it as popular as it is. Copper Fox has been making single malt for longer, but they don't really have the same sort of, I don't want to say appeal because they make absolutely amazing spirits and they're great people, but they don't have the same kind of advertising and presentation that the Virginia Distillery Company has in terms of placing their spirits in front of people as a brand on par with Scottish single malts, which is
Anybody
in
out
itself a controversial sort of statement, but it's true. They make an amazing product. Most of the distilleries in Virginia do make amazing products.
let's be real fair here. Doug decided to make a podcast with two born and bred Virginians, so like we
Yeah.
are very biased.
Yes.
But
Well, there's a
people
reason.
outside of
There's a reason that we're going out of our way to cover this Virginia whiskey tournament, right? So unless you mean
there
that you
is,
have biases within the tournament, in which case your editorial integrity hangs on your ability to be objective. Good luck.
no pressure.
I will say
anyone-
I have not voted.
Oh. Anyone outside of Virginia might also recognize the Virginia Whiskey Distillery as one of the ingredients in Lost Lantern's American Vatted Malt.
Great call out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten about that.
The American Vatted Malt #1 is similar to, I would say that it's kind of America's take on Johnny Walker Blue. To market it to the regular consumer almost. It is a blend of several different American single malts. It is absolutely wonderful. It does not come at a low price point, but I think that it is well worth what it sells for right now. It is hard to explain, and we'll have to have a conversation about that someday. But right now, I mean, that is what many people outside of Virginia will probably, if they're whiskey nerds, I suppose, will probably recognize it as.
For sure. I wonder if you say blue label just because the label's blue. I would say
that is a big reason why. I say blue.
Okay. So I would say
the price and the label color.
Yeah, Johnny Walker Blue Label is a blended whiskey, of course, and
Yes.
the price point is double the Lost Lantern, if I'm not mistaken. The Lost Lantern American Vatted Malt #1 goes for $120 ish, if I'm not mistaken. You guys could check
Johnny
that real
Walker
quick.
Blue Label typically goes for between $240 to $300, depending on where you are and what taxes are.
Yeah, so I would
Johnny Walker
say
Blue Label is way more expensive than I thought it was.
yeah, it is. It has gotten higher, and it's kind of shocking. I will say though, I think you may be thinking, for comparison in terms of price and flavor and makeup, you may be thinking Johnny Walker Green Label, which comes in around $80. And is a slightly smoky, which I believe this is also, but only slightly smoky, all blended malt, which is blended malt is not a category that even has a proposed definition per se in the United States, because the word blended in the United States whiskey laws is a fraught word, and American single malt is still being legislated. I had comments on that I sent to the TTB. That's a topic for another time. We'll get into that. Oh yeah, let me add to my sticky note. American single malt episode.
Blended malt episode.
That we could do that too. All right, we're just adding to the list. Anyway, what is in the vatted malt is Balcones from Texas, Copperworks from Washington, Santa Fe Spirits from New Mexico, 888 Distillery from Massachusetts, Virginia Distillery Company from Virginia, and Westward Whiskey from Oregon.
All of which are beautiful, none of which we're going to be talking about in this segment.
Except for Virginia
besides
Whiskey
Virginia Whiskey Distilling Company.
Never Irish. Well, it's an American whiskey. Of course there's no Irish in it. No. Irish is on the list. No, I know what he means. Irish is on the sticky note. Don't worry about it. It's. In the version of the sticky note that's in my head. We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, don't even begin to worry about an Irish whiskey episode, because we don't have any plan yet. But there are. I'm sure they're in the works. I'm thinking about them a lot. I'm sure everyone else is too.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Should.
Please do. Save me from myself. But also, here's the sticky note.
Excellent.
All right, moving on.
So the next one is Blue Sky Distillery. And I typoed because I originally did these slides at like 2 a.m. Blue Sky Distillery, which is down in Smithfield, Virginia, which is more famous for its salty ham. They produce...
If you've never had Virginia country ham, it is one of the best things that anyone has ever made, period.
I'm a big fan of Cracker Barrel breakfast, and so country ham has a place in my heart. Probably isn't Virginia
it
right
is...
now.
Different episode. We're right down country ham episode.
All right, let's get back on track.
All right.
Yeah.
So, quick cliff notes. First distillery to be a certified green tourism partner. Their Triple Deuce whiskey is distilled from 100% locally grown wheat, and they imply but don't outright state on their website that they source Virginia white oak barrels for their whiskey. I am not sure why this isn't a wheat whiskey. But I'm sure that there is a reason for it. They also make some rums, some vodka, a painted pig peanut butter whiskey, which... Okay.
Is it competitor for Screwball? It's a big market segment. Flavored whiskey.
I mean, it is a smart segment to get into, given its popularity currently. They are an interesting distillery in that their focus is not on whiskey, but they do produce a couple, and thus are eligible for the Virginia Whiskey Tournament. The labeling on Triple Deuce, you might notice, is sort of an interesting shape and a weird name. It is a reference to a popular carburetor configuration for hot rods, which is 3 2-barrel carburetors. Hence the carburetor inlet shape on the label. It is bottled at 90 proof, and it is definitely an interesting whiskey, and for the price, which is about $30, I definitely recommend it. It is very different.
So I'm wondering, great observation, it's not labeled a wheat whiskey. It's a whiskey distilled from 100% wheat, which is probably a specific name that they applied for from the TTB, perhaps. One of those things. Or it could be just whiskey, which you don't have to apply for, and then they go on to further specify distilled from 100% wheat. I'm thinking there's 2 likely reasons that that's the case. Either it's not aged, which is clearly not true, or it's possibly aged in refilled casks.
Stored more than 1 day in reused cooperage, it says.
There you go.
The
More than 1 day.
Yes,
That colored.
the cheeky, we just barely, yeah, we just, well, it's probably just that they're not making any guarantees about length of time.
Yeah.
I suppose so.
And
Are they? Does it say on the label whether or not they're using any caramel coloring or anything like that? Because
It
that color
does
would
not.
imply much longer.
Oh, and if it's not labeled straight whiskey, they could be adding caramel coloring to it. And
Yeah.
and for you Scotch single malt aficionados listening in, the allowed coloring in American spirits, spirits generally, is not necessarily E150A, because it is
Nope.
not as strict as Scotch in that respect. Anyway, yeah, some interesting stuff to think about. The more than 1 day is not so highly suspicious as the vaguest possible age statement you could put on a whiskey.
Yeah. It's not quite up there with the...
More than 1 day is not, in fact, the vaguest possible answer.
That's true. That I think 1 minute is or maybe even less. I think as long as it has gone into a cask and been drained out, right? Like there's what is it?
This has touched wood.
Yeah, it's touched wood. Yeah, it has been on the inside of an oak cask. Is like the minimum requirement of aging a non-straight American whiskey or any other spirit, I believe. Straight can apply to anything. Anyway, yeah, that's fun. It's always fun to tear apart a label like that. What is this really trying to say to me? And as our longtime fans who've been watching since episode 1 know, we love to tear apart a good label.
Yes. And bad labels too.
Bad labels too, yeah.
Even more fun, honestly.
Even more fun.
My friends and members of the lodge may know my feelings on that whiskey, but I will not share them now because there isn't time.
Not implying anything at all. Let's move on.
No.
Not implying anything.
Yep. Next up is Silverback Distillery. This is the distillery that operates both in the Commonwealth of Virginia and Pennsylvania. They're founded in Virginia in August of 2014, and they make a 4-grain bourbon, a honey rye liqueur, which they label as a honey rye whiskey, but legally is not a whiskey. Because it literally contains straight up honey. It's not finished. Anyway, and a rye whiskey, a couple of rye whiskeys. They are interesting because they also make a gin. Sorry. They're interesting because currently you can only purchase their spirits through their tasting room in Virginia and elsewhere outside of the state of Virginia. You cannot purchase their spirits through VA ABC currently, which is a little wild because they used to be, you walked into a VA ABC store and they had sort of pride of place in the Made in Virginia section. And yes, they are. Are you familiar with them, the Pawn? So the distillery is one of the handful in the Commonwealth of Virginia with a woman at the helm and her daughter following suit. I think probably the only actually mother-daughter team in the state.
Did some research. So even though we're saying we're doing the research so you don't have to, hey, it's great that you're doing your own research, right? Trust but verify. Or don't trust us. That's fine too.
Yeah.
Don't never trust us.
But they are really interesting. I'm not 100% sure where specifically they are distilling. I know that they specifically refer to their facility in Virginia currently as a tasting room, which sort of implies that it isn't their distillery, but because they are listed by VA ABC as a Virginia distillery, they make the cut. And I may revisit these rules later if I find out that they aren't actually distilling in Virginia, but we will see, because I honestly can't say for sure, and I don't want to exclude anyone on the basis of I think they might. You know what I
In
mean?
It'd be a real
in the
shame to have
first,
a late bracket
yeah.
disqualification, though. And
Yes,
sorry,
No,
it
yeah,
go
in the
ahead,
first
Spencer.
bracket we definitely included something where we were not sure if they were a non distilling
Right.
maker. So yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
would we not
So
have included them on that basis? I feel like NDPs are generally considered distilleries in the layperson's parlance.
so they bottle in Virginia. If you bottle your whiskey in Virginia and you operate in Virginia, and they Silverback definitely qualifies on at least one of those, I hope. Then you qualify, because an NDP that is producing whiskey is producing a product. Whether it is them doing secondary aging or blending to a profile, or even just picking barrels. If they are producing a whiskey in Virginia, they count. I was just vocalizing my concern that I couldn't tell for sure whether they were distilling in Virginia or Pennsylvania and where they were bottling. Um, but they do have a really cool looking still setup. Sort of an interesting combination of things there. Um, there's a very traditional looking or traditional American looking pot still to one side, a vodka column, and then a hybrid pot still on the far side of the vodka column from the American pot still.
That's the copper column there.
Yes, it's got a pot at the bottom and then a column that looks like it may not have any plates in it, but I can't tell for sure.
I don't even know how to
Um,
tell that, to be honest, from looking at a still, which is kind of an embarrassing admission.
I mean, I am no expert. I believe that you can tell by segmentation, but looking at the vodka column, I'm not so sure. So I don't
You
know. You
can't
should ask
always
Joe
tell by
about that.
segmentation. It's a tough one actually.
We'll have to ask a distiller.
Fair enough, and we've got some of them coming on eventually.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, we do.
We'll talk more about that in the latter half of our presentation live stream today. I just want to make a note about the honey rye liqueur that they label as a whiskey.
Yes.
I don't really know the rules on this, and I've always been curious to really look into it, except that I don't personally care that much about the category of flavored whiskey. But there are a lot of what you would call flavored whiskeys that do say
Yes.
honey whiskey or
Cinnamon whiskey.
or
Yeah.
peanut butter whiskey, and they do actually just put whiskey on the same line as all of that, which like my spirit's identity brain says that shouldn't be cool, but it happens so often that there must be a rule that allows
Yeah.
it.
It's one of those, in my reading of the standards for identification, there's sort of what the TTB outlines there, and sort of the caveat being, as long as you make it clear that it is flavored, you can just,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's something
Yeah,
like that. I think there's other words on the label that make it clear that it's a flavored spirit, or
yeah,
a spirit based flavored liqueur, which
yes,
answers the Pond's question, I believe. Yes, if it's below 40%, it's not a spirit product, so it can't be called whiskey or rum or brandy or tequila or what have you.
But
just don't look at the
people below
Fireball
40%
label.
do still call it whiskey, which is a fascinating thing that has kind of been litigated recently. Yeah.
It happens elsewhere in the world. You can have so there's a Japanese whiskey. If I'm not I won't name names because I'm not 100% sure. But there's a Japanese whiskey that
37%.
outside of Japan is always 40%. But if you buy it inside of Japan, it may actually be whiskey blended with like umeshu or something like that. And it's like 35% or 30%, and it's like whiskey enough for their rules, which are pretty lax. But in the
I
United
really want to try
States,
that whiskey.
yeah, in the United States, if you call it a spirit, if you give it the name of a spirit, it has to be 40%. That's yeah, and below that is a liqueur, and they have different rules for that. And the protection
Yeah.
of the terms like whiskey, there must be other words on. I believe this is what makes it okay. There must be other words on the label that make it clear that it is a whiskey based flavored liqueur, and not actually whiskey. But this is just one of those hard things about reading a label when it comes down to
Yeah.
it. Anyway, let's move on, I think.
Yep.
So that is it for batch C. So I'm going to real quick go back to that slide and just summarize that again. So in Virginia Whiskey Tournament Round 1 Batch C, we have Davis Valley Distillery, the Virginia Distillery Company, Blue Sky Distillery, and Silverback Distillery. Any final comments, Phill?
Just that be sure to vote. Be sure to look for these products. Even if they aren't available to you locally, a lot of these distilleries have websites where you can order it or find out where you can order their products from.
Well, all right. I think I'm going to stick to the plan of just doing a single video for both of these batches. So let's move straight on into batch D.
Batch D, which has two of the other bigger names in Virginia distilling, starting with the rye whiskey powerhouse, Catoctin Creek, Springfield Distillery, Sleepy Fox Distillery, and Filibuster Distillery. And all of these distilleries make pretty good products. Full disclosure, I've only had a sample from Sleepy Fox, and I don't remember it very clearly, but I recall enjoying it, which is not unusual. Shall we move on to...
Yeah, absolutely. Catoctin Creek is up first.
Catoctin Creek, founded in 2009 in Purcellville, Virginia by Scott and Becky Harris. Their head distiller, Becky Harris, also happens to have served as the president of the Distilled Spirits Association of America, or one of the major associations for craft distilling. They are behind a lot of the legislation in Virginia that allows distilleries to sell spirits in-house. They are, one of the organizations that led the charge in making craft whiskey possible. And they make whiskey from 100% rye grain, locally sourced in Virginia, and brandy made from a locally sourced fruit, primarily pear brandy. They make some peach brandy, and some more traditional grape brandy. And recently released a fairly old special batch of brandy that is fantastic. And fun fact, they are the most awarded distillery in Virginia. If you go to their website and go to the awards page and scroll down, it is a heck of a list.
So now we are faced with the dilemma of giving, potentially, if we vote them up, giving Catoctin Creek yet another award.
Yes.
Which,
for my
if
own
it's deserved,
purposes,
it's deserved. So
yeah. Catoctin Creek is probably my favorite Virginia distillery. For that reason, I will not personally be voting for them on the on the thing, for various reasons. But they are my personal favorite. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. So you say they are your favorite, and you won't be voting for them?
Because I know that Phill will be voting for them. At least I assume so.
Oh, well, then you're just knowingly canceling out your own vote, then, aren't you?
Yeah.
I am not voting.
No, but
Phil's not voting.
Oh, Phill is not voting. Oh, my bad then. No, very, very
Phil
fair.
has to remain objective because Phill is running this whole
then
thing.
I'll have to vote for them. In my new Twitter account, I will have to vote for them.
I'll say I believe I personally have only had a sip of 2 of their expressions at an event. Stood out to me as one of the best things there, and that was years ago. That was a year and a half ago, I think, is probably what I should say. And I have not forgotten how freaking good this rye is. And I am deeply disappointed that my local Total Wine doesn't sell Catoctin Creek cask strength anymore. I missed out buying it when I made the choice to buy McCarthy's instead of Catoctin Creek that day, and I have never seen it again. And that is one of my deepest regrets in didn't buy it land.
You
Before I
always
make the
regret
statement,
the
I
ones that you pass on, and you never regret the ones that you buy.
oh
Uh,
yes.
within
Before
reason.
I say this, I should once again reiterate that DemiTastes started a podcast with two Virginian guys, so we're very biased. I personally think that Catoctin Creek is the best rye distiller in the United States, and I will stand by that statement.
I can't say that I agree with you, but
A little bonus for the video watchers. By the way, for the record, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on stream, but I'm based in the Pacific Northwest, so Westland and Copperworks are my local distilleries, and that's one big reason that I'm so huge on American single malt. This is the place for it.
I mean, and everyone's got to have a favorite style, except for the people who drink a little bit of everything, right?
That wouldn't be me. No, sir. But I also do have a favorite style or two. Okay, hold on. Comment. I don't know what this means, but I'm gonna read it. Let me first check
No,
that this.
Don't read that.
Yeah. I was gonna say that sounds like it could be. It could be something I shouldn't read. Let's just move on. Read it to myself before I read it out loud, just in case it's something inappropriate, which it's not really. But let's just move on.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Springfield Distillery.
They're really cool. Founded in 2014 in Halifax, Virginia, and they've got their facility is a new built structure and a house originally built in 1842, hence the name of one of their whiskeys. They're family owned. They source their grain from the area surrounding Halifax, and they use an interesting 300-gallon Trident still. Trident being a manufacturer of distillery and brewery equipment in the Northeast, New England, I believe. And they make scratch corn whiskey, scratch flavored corn whiskey, the Springfield bourbon, and 1842 whiskey, which all of which is very good. Their bourbon is fantastic. I don't have a bottle on hand. I had been planning on visiting them and buying a bottle at the Virginia Spirits Expo last weekend, but I didn't manage to get around to it. Next time, though. I'm trying to decide if I missed anything. I think I've got them covered. Yes. I honestly think that one of the coolest things about them is the fact that they've got the building from 1842 that is part of their facility. Not what is pictured, mind you. That is one of their newer built facility.
Yeah, this strikes me as like one of those places to say there's so many different reasons to potentially vote for a distillery in this tournament, right? It's really just whatever you feel is like cool to you about a place. If the location is cool to you, that's great. If the Trident still is cool to you, I'm actually curious what that is. Somebody mind sending me a picture of that so I can put it up on the slide, because that seems like it'd be a really cool thing to show.
Yes, let me see if I've still got their website up somewhere.
Maybe I'll see what I can
I
find.
don't, but
It's a great thing to be doing live.
oh, I've got it. The website up. All right. I promise I'm not bad at technology, except that I definitely am. Come
Oh, that's such a tiny picture that I found.
on. That's not the best picture. I know that they've got, but it's an interesting looking.
I'm gonna have to cut this segment, so I'm gonna put the
Yeah,
I'm gonna
sorry.
put the trident still up, and then we can talk about it. So we're gonna have to find our way back in. Yeah, so okay, I've got up on the slide. So that's a picture of the trident still at Springfield Distillery, correct? Not just some
Uh,
random trident still, but actually theirs? Or is this...
oh, yes, that is actually theirs.
Okay, let's try this again so we can have a tight cut here.
Yep.
Okay, so I've just put up the picture of the 300-gallon trident still up on the slide. That's the copper still on the right side of the picture there. This is Springfield still. So there you go. For anybody who likes the equipment angle on a distillery being their favorite or not.
And it's apparently to an extent hand hammered, and hand formed. Like the dome at the top is hand formed, um, and it was specially built for them specifically by the folks at Trident, which is cool because they're pretty much every still is hand built specifically for the distillery. Um, but it's always interesting to see, this hand built piece of equipment that is to the spec of the distiller. There are some places that use sort of more off the shelf components, but custom stills are kind of cool.
Yeah, and that tells you that the distiller really knows what they want out of their still. All right, moving on, we've got the last distillery for today, Sleepy Fox Distillery.
We've got one more after this, actually.
Oh, my bad.
So Sleepy Fox was founded in Ashland, Virginia in 2016. They primarily manufacture moonshine, but they also make a bourbon and had at one point a rye whiskey that appears to have been discontinued. And their products are currently exclusively available from their tasting room in Ashland, Virginia, which is where their distillery is. And I believe that they also offer tours. They are a great example of tradition over everything else, because a lot of what they do is directly born from the traditions of moonshining, down to being difficult to make heads or tail of their website. But they've got a fantastic facility, and again, like it's hard to say much about them beyond that they are a bunch of people sort of who poured their heart and soul into creating a product. And I believe they're trying to get their products into VA ABC. There are relatively narrow windows to do that, and especially if you're a smaller producer, it is more difficult, because there are minimum supply requirements, and that sort of thing.
All right, any comments on that, Spooky?
I don't think so for myself. It sounds a fascinating one. My only
Oh, we lost your audio.
really tried that back when I lived in Virginia, unfortunately.
Sorry, we lost your audio there real quick. Would you go back to the beginning of that comment?
No real notes from me. My only regret is that I hadn't actually ever found any back when I lived in Virginia myself. I would be very excited to try some personally, but no particular notes from me myself. Yeah.
I love when we start getting into the no, yeah, no, yeah. That we're having a good part of the night now. How's that absinthe going there?
Oh, the absinthe has hit, unfortunately,
Aha.
which makes it way more important that I load up my research and comments about the next distillery right now, actually. So yeah.
Yep. All right, I'm ready to move on.
Yep.
One sec. Okay, and the for sure the last one now we have Filibuster
Yes.
Distillery Company.
Yes, they are interesting. They were originally founded in Washington, D.C., which, as you might imagine, is an expensive place to run a distillery and hard to have the space to properly operate a distillery. So they moved out to Mauretown, Virginia, which is out in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and make a rye, a bourbon, and an American whiskey, as well as a couple of gins. And they just released a bonded bourbon and a cognac finished bourbon release. I have a bottle of dual cask rye from back when they were sourcing MGP, um, but they are currently bottling their own distilled product.
Nice. I like to see some cask finishes. That's a good place for
Yes.
a young craft distillery, relatively young. Sorry, did you say when they were founded?
I did not because I forgot to put that note on the slide, and now I can't remember.
Let me see if I've.
But relatively new, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean
yes.
Yeah.
within the last 10 years.
Okay, we can get a fact check on that in a bit.
2013 on that one.
Okay, so
10 years.
So Filibuster founded in Washington D.C. in 2013. And
Yes.
okay, and they moved to Virginia, so they are now a Virginia
Yes.
distillery. Okay. Yeah, I think
They're
I
a
think
very big Virginia distillery. They're available in various places. They're actually a fairly findable one, honestly.
Yes.
I think they make a fairly good spirit as well.
They honestly make some really interesting spirits. I recommend trying their stuff in the skinnier bottles.
okay.
I can't reach the other one. I've got a bottle of the Boondogler, which is in their new bottling, as seen on the slide, as opposed to the shorter squatter bottle.
Okay.
Because the stuff in the newer bottle shape is definitely their own distilled spirit.
All right, Phil, any closing comments on Filibuster Distillery Company?
They make some really interesting products. You can order directly from them. They've got some interesting products. Looking at their website, they have a triple cask sherry, um, a Scotch barrel finish, a Madeira cask finish, um, the cognac cask finish, and their 5-year-old bottled and bond bourbon available for sale on their website. And they, are sort of an interesting and unique story, having coming from the District of Columbia down to Mauretown, Virginia, to actually operate stills in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I just want to reiterate, I think it is cool that such a young distillery is releasing not just a 4-year-old bottled in bond, but a 5-year-old bottled in bond. And I really think that interesting cask finishes like a cognac cask are really cool things that I'd like to see a lot more of in the industry. So I'm very happy to see that. All right. Having visited, wow, how am I haven't gone to any of these places. All right. Blah, 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 blah. Nope, can't do it. I'm just I'm done. I'm done.
Having
Having
covered
visited
batch
Virginia in spirit, now we return
In
to our normal
spirits.
content. In spirits.
Having
Yeah.
given a description of all of the entrants in batch D, let's recap one more time. They are Catoctin Creek Distilling, Springfield Distillery, Sleepy Fox Distillery, and Filibuster Distillery. And having covered this week's polls for the Virginia Whiskey Tournament, I think it's time for us to cheers out of this segment. Phil, would you care to lead us in a toast?
Here's to craft, to innovation, and the future of distilling in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Sláinte.
Sláinte.
Sláinte.